Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Chats, Curls, and Sanity. My name is Alex, and if you're new here, hello, welcome. And we're gonna go ahead and get started with episode number 4. I can't believe it'll be already a month that I've started my channel. Time has been going by super, super fast. I feel like yeah, time is going by super fast. It's already September. By the time this comes out, it'll be the 2nd of September. So I'm recording this a day beforehand. I usually try to record like Friday nights or Saturday mornings. But of course, I can't do anything Friday during the day because I work. So it's usually when my boyfriend is home and he's able to help me out with the kids, or if that's not possible, I try to do it when they're asleep. But Saturday, it was already too late for me to record and I just wasn't feeling it anymore. My makeup was already, I had already been wearing it for a good while, so I was like, whatever, I'll just wait and I'll do it tomorrow. Today's Sunday, so this weekend is Labor Day weekend. So I have tomorrow off, which I'm very excited about. Well, yeah, I'm just gonna be talking like present time, I guess. Monday I do have a nail appointment, not myself, but I'm gonna be doing somebody else's nails. I'm really excited for that. I have to wake up early. It's already 1 in the morning. I know I said that I didn't want to do it yesterday because it was already late, but I just wasn't feeling it. I just wasn't feeling like recording it. I just didn't have the motivation yesterday. And like I said, my makeup was just trash at the end of the day, so I was just like, whatever, I'll just record tomorrow, which is today's Sunday. Well, I guess now you can think of it as like early Monday morning, but so yeah, both me and my boyfriend were off from work. I started my schedule for I work Tuesday through Friday now, and then I go to school Mondays and Fridays. I have labs those days, so yeah, so it's kind of a transition for me from going when I was working Monday through Thursday. It's a little different, but we'll see how everything goes, and so yeah. So thankfully, right now I don't have pesky, disgusting flies bothering me. One of my tias, she was telling me that she was like, "Oh my gosh, you're worse than me with the flies. You would just like focus, like just pan on one fly, and it kind of just like messed up your focus from your video." And I was like, "Yeah, I know. They were so annoying. It was like in this room alone, it was probably like 3 or 4 of them. I don't know what. Thankfully, we got that under control, and there was a lot more like in the other parts of the houses, or the other part of the house. But it's so annoying. But how are you guys doing? I'm doing all right. There hasn't been any negative coming from my videos, which is really nice. Worrying for I was worried to get backlash on it, but so far I've gotten very nice messages from people in like the family and things like that, and just people supporting me, and just thank you guys so much for liking and sharing and subscribing and all that. But we're gonna go ahead and get into this next episode. So it's gonna be a part 2 from my first video, or not first video, but episode 3, which you can see in my previous videos. And it's just gonna a continuation of how my childhood was and all that, and just half of the things I wasn't able to talk about or it was my first episode would have probably been a good 2 hours long if I just kept it like that. So I was just like, I'll just kind of separate it a little bit. I know it's a little time consuming to or watch a video, listen/watch a video that's very, very long. Especially, I think that was for sure my longest video. I think it was a little bit over an hour, not even that much over. I think my other videos I think the first one was like 40-ish minutes, and then the second one was like 50 or so, and then this past one was the hour. But yeah, and I was actually I was kind of surprised that that it was even an hour, because I had the whole um interruptions and things like that, and my kids waking up from their naps and stuff like that. So but yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and get into this episode. So I don't remember where I finished off in my previous video, but I did have some other stories and things to share in regards to how Sharon was. And if you don't know who Sharon is, then you're gonna have to go to the previous episode to figure out who Sharon is. But so I kind of started seeing the shift. I mean, so kind of weird, but I think me and my sister, so everything I had, my sister had, and vice versa when we were little. I mean, I couldn't get anything without her getting it, or she couldn't get anything without me getting it. It was just kind of that thing, especially since we're so close in age. I mean, it was pretty much like if we were twins in a sense. Like, not so much, but sort of. And I mean, there was at one point, I think my dad had told us that they would dress us up the exact same way, because I guess it was just the jealousy of it. It was like, oh, well, my sister has this, I want that. Or, oh, I have this, or she has this, I want it, or that kind of thing. So um I um I don't even know where I was going with that, to be honest with you. But so, oh, I remember. So we had these like Minnie Mouse, like little diary kind of things. It was kind of like a plasticky kind of cover. It was red and like sparkly, and then it had the flap, and it was like a heart, and then it had like Minnie Mouse on it, and you can like flip open, like it was like the Velcro part of it, and then it opens into like a little journal kind of thing. And I remember, I don't know if at that time Sharon was already being ugly with us, or I don't know. I'm pretty sure because of what we wrote in the diary, but what I would like to call it my diary. But all over the front of the, not where the glitter was, but like the inside pages of it, we had written Sharon is a bitch. um Tell me, I don't know, tell me why. I mean, at that point, at that age, I want to say I was maybe like 8, 7, 8, 9, around there. I don't remember. And to this day, my cousins will remind us, like, oh, do you guys remember when you guys had your Minnie Mouse journal and you guys had Sharon's a bitch on it? Like, I was like, and we still laugh about it to this day. But so I know they're gonna be in cahoots right now, laughing their asses off listening to this video and that little portion of it. But so yeah, I think and like I said, I do have my notes here, so I try not to look down so much, so that way it's a little bit more fluent and a little bit more um just like the video kind of flows a little bit better than me having to like look down and remember like my notes and things like that. But um so this is, I feel like part 2 is a little bit more juicy than part 1, I will say. And one thing that I do remember from my childhood, so this is already like with the house that they currently live in. So when we moved in there, I was 14 going on 15, so I was starting like high school. I don't remember exactly what time. I think I want to say it was before my 15th birthday, because to me I was like, "Oh my gosh, we're going to get a new house for my birthday. Like, it's my birthday present." Like, yeah, fucking right, bitch. Like, of course you're not going to get a fucking new house for your 15th birthday. Like, calm down. But so I want to say it was maybe around March, April, like those kind of months after I turned 15, which was in like 2014. What is when I started high school? Like 2013 to 2014, I think, is when I started high school. But So I remember, so Sharon didn't really cook a lot. I mean, she cooked here and there, not really. I mean, a lot of the time she would have her mom go to the house and she would cook things and things like that. But rarely, I mean, it was pretty much just like chile, cebolla, tomate, carne, y ya. You know, like it was just like a very simple kind of thing. I mean, there was sopita here and there, but I do remember there was a couple of times me and my sister, we would get back home from school or whatever, and we wouldn't really ask because at that point, I do know for sure like the relationship between Sharon and both me and my sister, it wasn't that great, especially during those years. It was just really fucked. But I do remember, so of course we would get home. Of course we were hungry. I mean, school lunch was around 12 or so, I think, during high school, maybe 11:30 or so. So I mean, from then till we got out, it was like 5 hours or so. By the time we got home, like 6 or whatever. So I remember when we would get home, depending on what time we got home, um, we would get home. Of course, we were hungry. So me and my sister, we would go and look into the kitchen and see. At that point, when we got out of school, my younger siblings were already out of school because they would get out of school at 2:45. And I think, yeah, because when I was a freshman, my brother was in elementary school and my sister was in elementary school as well. And then my sister, she was in middle school. So I don't remember exactly the ages. I don't, I want to say it started more when we were in high school. And if not, then it was middle school age that we would get home. Of course, they were already home. And she would only make enough food for them to eat, like just my younger siblings. And I'd be kind of like, oh, well, I mean, there was only like probably like a cup of sopita left or whatever that she had made them. And so me and my sister would be like, okay, well, what can we make ourselves to eat? We kind of had to make something up right then and there. Okay, we would just eat like noodles, or we would eat just like something very simple, very plain. Because at that point, I think the only thing that I really knew how to make myself was like the first ever thing that I know I learned how to make was huevo con chorizo, and my grandma taught me how to make that because she was like, oh well, it's just something that maybe you want to learn or know how to make just in case you don't have anything, or you're kind of just wondering what you want to eat. It's just something very simple. It's good. You can put it like in a burrito or whatever. But I remember we would have to make ourselves something to eat. Of course, a cup for both of us. Who is that going to feed? You know, I mean, it was probably for only one person at that point. So I remember we would have to make ourselves something to eat. And I don't know if Sharon told my dad or if whatever Sharon did or said. I remember when my dad would get home, because I think those times where we had to make ourselves food, my dad wasn't home. He was either working or whatever. And I remember my dad would like get us both together and he'd be like, "Oh, that's very disrespectful of you to like make food when Sharon made food." And I was sitting there looking at him like, "Are you fucking serious? Like you're going to really tell us that it's disrespectful for us to make food, but there wasn't enough food for the both of us? How do you want us to, if there was either no food at all or there was just like the last of it that she had made, what do you expect us to do? You know, like just not eat, just go about our day like if we're not hungry." Like it just didn't make any sense. But so yeah, I think that was like one of the big ones where she just wouldn't make enough to eat or she just wouldn't make anything at all. And I mean, it wasn't all the time. Let me just point that out. It wasn't all the time, but there were a couple of times and a good amount of times where we had to make ourselves food. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, I feel like people are going to be like, "Oh, well, you're already 14 years old. You can make yourself something to eat." Yes, of course, I can make myself something to eat. I didn't have a problem making myself something to eat. The problem was getting in trouble for it because it's disrespectful to somebody that didn't make you food. Like, how is it disrespectful? It didn't make any sense to me. But, and me and my sister would be like, oh, well, how do you want us to eat something, like share like a little portion of food, and for us to be okay with that? I mean, we're hungry, we just got back from school. Of course we want to eat something a little bit more than a cup of sopita to share within ourselves. And we would get in trouble for it, and we would have to apologize and say, oh, like, we didn't mean to make food when you had already made food, which was stupid. Because I mean, in my head I was like, well, fuck no, I'm not gonna say sorry for that. Like, why the fuck am I gonna say sorry for making myself food? Like, it just didn't make sense. And my dad would make us apologize if we didn't apologize, or if we didn't try to say something to her, we would get in trouble for it. And so that kind of leads up into the next topic is, if Sharon was in a bitchy mood, if Sharon was in an ugly mood, she wouldn't say hi to us. When she picked us up from school, we would get into the vehicle, and she wouldn't say anything to us. Like, it was just like dead silent, like very awkward, like very, very, very awkward. Like, I don't think I've ever felt more uncomfortable in my entire life sitting in the back seat driving home. And for whatever reason, she was upset, she was in her mood or whatever, and we knew, don't even talk to her. Like, there's no point in getting an ugly response or a rude response. There's no point. So me and my sister, we wouldn't say anything to her, and we would go about our day. We would get home, we would do our homework, whatever the case may be, we would eat, and we would walk past her. We wouldn't say anything to her. I mean, at that point, you're the adult in the situation. Why do you expect for a 14, 15, 16-year-old to go up to you and start a conversation with you? You know what I mean? Like, I know some people are going to be like, oh, well, you have to respect your elders, and oh, you have to, but in my head, I was just like, fuck that. Like, why am I going to talk to her and get a snarky, like a snarky remark or like a snarky response from her? There's just no point in that. I don't want to deal with that shit. So I just wouldn't talk to her, and there was times where we spend the whole entire day just not talking to her. And during those times was when my dad worked a lot. So he would work a lot of doubles, and he would work a lot of like back-to-back shifts and things like that. So he wasn't home a lot. I mean, and when he was home, he was sleeping, and then that was pretty much it. And and me and my sister do vividly remember that. We would remember, and we still to this day remember us having to kind of tiptoe, oh, like, can I say this or can I say that in front of Sharon without getting in trouble? And it wasn't that I got beat, and I got like that, or I wouldn't get slapped or anything like that. Did I mess up? I feel like I messed up my lip gloss. Anyways, um, we would kind of have to tiptoe around the house of, oh, okay, I mean, I don't want to get close to her and, something happen, and not physically happen to us, but just something to happen afterwards when my dad got home and told us something. She never told us anything. She was never the discipline or, oh, I'm going to talk to you in a serious way kind of thing. It was just more of, oh, she's going to go and tell my dad, and my dad's going to fucking tell us some shit. And there was one time where there was one of those days where she didn't want to talk to us for whatever reason. Like, for whatever reason, we were at, that didn't make any sense to me. We were at school the entire day, and she has something against us. And we would get home, she wouldn't say anything to us the whole day, just either staying in her room or just walking around, whatever, doing whatever she had to do, and not talking to us. Like, nothing was said to us. Not, oh, hey, like, I made food, or oh, hey, like, dinner's ready, or whatever. We were never the family to sit down and eat dinner together. it was very, very rare that we did that, and it was either because we went to a restaurant and we went out to eat, or they brought back home food and we ate it with them or whatever. But it was never like a, okay guys, come on, 6 o'clock is approaching, okay, let's set the table and sit down in our seats and talk about our day. No, that it was never like that. And I feel like I would want that for my family now that I have kids. Like, I do want to incorporate that family time that I didn't have as a kid, and more like just more regularly, if that makes sense. Like, okay, I want to have dinner with my kids every day. I want for us to sit down at the table and talk about what happened in your day, whether it was good or bad, and me cooking a meal with my boyfriend and making it for our family and for our kids, and that social family dynamic all in one. And so, I mean, there was times where she made food, but did we know about it? Well, no. I was just locked up. I was locked up in my room. I never wanted to get out of my room because I just hated the repercussion that happened whenever I set foot in my outside of my room, regardless of me having the intention to do something or not. And so yeah, my dad would get mad at us and he'd be like, "Oh, you didn't talk to her, you didn't say hi to her. Like, that's very disrespectful. She doesn't feel comfortable, and she should feel comfortable around you guys, and she should feel comfortable in her own home." And I'm just like, "Bro, like, how do you think we feel? Like, as the kids in the scenario, how do you expect for us to make an adult feel comfortable if she doesn't make us feel comfortable? That doesn't make any sense." And it was our fault. If she felt a certain way against us, she would make it seem like if she was the victim and it was our fault. And it was only our fault. She could never do wrong. And my dad has a saying of, because he had gotten a little bit more involved in the church. I come from like a Catholic background, so he started going to church more, I think, because I didn't get my first communion, which, if you guys know, if you're Catholic, well, then you know. But I didn't, me and my sister, we didn't get our first communions. And usually when you get that, you're around 8 or 7 or 8 or so. Like, you're like an elementary age. I didn't get that shit until I was in like a freshman or a sophomore in high school. I was already like, and of course, at the church that we went to, it was, they had like an older group. So it wasn't like us 15-year-olds with fucking 8-year-olds or 7-year-olds. Like, so of course we weren't the only ones that were older getting our first communion. And I think that's when my dad started getting more into the church and trying to go to church every Sunday and things like that. And it was a requirement for us to go to church regardless for getting our first communion. Um, and he had the saying of, oh, he had a priority. His first priority was God, and then his wife, and then his kids, and then everything else is kind of just underneath that. And to me, I found that pretty fucked up, because it's kind of like, oh, well, your wife is above your kids. Like, I understand that you're one, and once you are married, because they first got married by court and then they got married by church a good while after that. I think by court I was maybe like 8 or 9, maybe, and then when they got married by church, I was like maybe middle school age. I really don't know the actual facts of when they got married by church and when they got married by court, but me thinking about it now as a mom, I'm kind of like, oh, like, that's fucked, like, that you have all these other priorities. And I know a lot of people have God as their first priority, and that's their first priority, and nobody can tell them different. And I understand that. Of course, I'm not religious. I struggle with that pretty pretty bad. I do struggle with the whole religion and faith and things like that, which I feel like will maybe be like another episode. But just to kind of get this little point across, I do not see myself prioritizing people like that, or like my family like that. I cannot prioritize my kids over this, or I can't prioritize, like, to me, my kids are my priority. Simple as that. I mean, I'm not going to say, oh, my kids, you know, my kids are my top priority, and that's just what it is. Of course, I still respect my boyfriend and I still love him to death, and but I'm not going to prioritize people like that. I'm not going to prioritize my boyfriend and my kids. I'm just not. You know what I mean? Like, they're my priority, and that's just what it is. I don't have to explain, oh, well, yeah, I see my boyfriend before my kids, or vice versa. I see my kids before my boyfriend. But if it really comes down to it, I feel like both me and my boyfriend, we have that mutual understanding, and we've already discussed this, that our kids are our first priority. Simple as that. Our kids are our first priority, and that's just what it is. So I feel like if you have that talk with your partner, in regards to that, of, okay, what are your priorities, then it's different. But to me, as a kid, when I heard that from my dad when I was 14, 15 years old, it just kind of felt like if I was just pretty much just nothing to him. Because, of course, if his wife came first, okay, well, then that means whatever she says goes, and whatever she wants, however she wants things to be done, and whatever the case may be, it was going to be her way, and you couldn't tell him anything. I mean, that's why I was, and I still am, very reserved when it comes to my feelings and speaking for myself, because whenever I would try to do so, my dad would just kind of be like, be quiet, you're the kid, I'm the adult, be quiet. That's it. I mean, even if I didn't even want to argue, it was kind of just like, well, I want to tell you how I feel. Like, I can't even have that. I can't tell you how I feel. You're my dad. You're supposed to listen to how I feel. Whether it's right or wrong, those are still my feelings. That's still how I feel. And you're dismissing those feelings, and that's why I am the way I am now. I was never able to speak about my feelings, and I was never able to talk about anything if it meant, or he thought that it was because I was trying to stand up to him, or if I was trying to like rebel against him, or whatever the case may be. And that's something, I feel like a lot of those errors that happened in my childhood, even though it was not me with those errors, so like, for example, how my dad dismissed my feelings all the time, I reflect on that, and I think I'll never let that happen to my kids. I will always let them tell me how they feel, and I will always hear them out. It doesn't matter. I mean, because that's how you grow that connection with them, and that's how you build that trust with them. Even though it's not, oh, I'm going to trust you to do this, or I'm going to trust you to know. It's the trust of, they can trust me to hear them out and listen to them and their feelings, and how this makes them feel, and how this makes them feel bad, or this makes them feel happy, and things like that. And so yeah, I mean, that was something that I had to deal with. I had to deal with my feelings being kind of swept under the rug, and they still are to this day. I mean, my first video came out, which was part 1, which is episode 3, and there was no response. I mean, I'm laying everything out in the open, and the publicly of how I felt and how I was treated, and there's no realization from the other parties that are involved. And so um I was talking to my tia, and she was telling me that she was crying when she was listening to my video, from one part of it. And I feel like I said in my first video, a lot of my family doesn't know what happened, and they might know the gist of it and whatever, but they don't really truly know exactly what happened when I was younger and when my sister was younger as well. And when I talk about all these things, when I say, oh, me and me, it's not because it just happened to me. Of course not. And I'm not dismissing that my sister was never involved in these stories whatsoever. But like I said, I don't want to speak on her behalf. And of course, I'll include her like, oh yeah, me and my sister this, or me and my sister that. But it's more just in respect, um, out of respect for her. And so yeah, that kind of leads into this as well. So, um, I, me and my dad were like the same. I don't like being told what to do, and that's something that I struggle with because there's been times where it's just something very simple. Like my boyfriend would just tell me like, not to tell me something to do, but I take it as that, and I'm like, well, you're not my dad. Like, don't tell me what to do because of how I grew up. Um, of course, your parents have to tell you like what to do. Like, oh, hey, you need to clean your room, or hey, you know what, you need to start doing your homework right now. Like, stop playing those games or whatever you're doing, and focus on your homework because you need to get it done. That I understand, but when it's thrown at your face all the time, of I'm the parent, you're the kid. Listen to what I'm saying. I don't care what you have to say. I don't care what you have to say. Like, be quiet. Be quiet. Be quiet. Like, just being shut up. Being quieted. And is that even a word? Quieted? Or just like being silenced. Let's use that word. Being silenced fucked me up mentally. Just fucked it up for me. I'll be real with you guys. I mean, I I obviously all these things that I struggle with to this day, and sometimes I don't realize the source of it until I actually start talking about it, and I'm like, "Oh shit, that's where that comes from." Oh, now I understand how I am the way I am, or yeah. Um oh, that's the reason why. Oh, now I understand. Now I can learn from it, and now I can make myself better for it. And so yeah, so with the whole silencing thing and whatever. So a lot of the time, so when I was before softball season started, so softball season started, we had tryouts in January, and then a game started like in February. Well, they were more like scrimmages and like stuff like that, but um so from the start of school, which was August, all the way up until December, I got out at 4 o'clock, and my sister did as well. And there were times where we would be there, we wouldn't we wouldn't get picked up until a while later after school was out. I mean, when you get out at 4 o'clock, all the cars are there, either from students that already have cars, or from parents that are picking up their kids from after school. But all the time, 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock. There was no change in that. And I remember, yeah, there were some times where we got picked up 4 o'clock, and then there was times where it was 4:15, 4:30, 4:45, 5 o'clock. I mean, I could never imagine me letting my kids like waiting for me to get them an hour after school has already passed. Um, and I remember there were times where, of course, her mom would come and pick us up, and we'd be like, oh, well, what her So we would ask her mom when she picked us up, oh, ¿dónde está Sharon? Oh, like she's at a doctor's appointment or whatever. Oh, okay, like whatever, right? And I remember she'd be like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna go and take you guys to your house, because I think she had a key to the house. I'm not sure. And whenever we would get home, either Sharon was already there or Sharon wasn't there, and the mom would wait until Sharon got home and then she would leave. But I do remember there was times where Sharon wasn't doing anything. Sharon was home because I think at that time she wasn't working. So when I was in high school, she wasn't working. She was a stay at home. And she wouldn't go and pick us up. And because she either just didn't want to, or whatever the case may be, but she wouldn't pick us up. There was times where I think at that point, so I didn't have a phone. The first phone that I had gotten, I was fifth grade. I was in fifth grade, but I only had it for a little bit because I ended up fucking losing that shit and it got thrown in the trash. And from then on, my dad didn't want to buy me a phone. So from fifth grade up until I want to say like my junior year, I didn't have a phone whatsoever. All my friends had their phones and this and that or whatever. I think my sister had a phone. I could be mistaken. I don't remember, but I don't even know how we called. Oh, I know how we called. I would call because I would ask my friends for their phone, like, hey, like, can I use your phone? Because obviously my friends knew that I didn't have a fucking phone. So I memorized their Sharon and my dad's phone numbers, and I would call and be like, hey, like, I'm already out of school. Like, are you picking me up? Are you guys picking us up? Or what's happening or whatever? Sometimes my dad would be like, oh, well, Sharon should be on her way. So just wait. Okay, whatever. There was times where I would call Sharon and she either wouldn't answer or she would answer very rudely. Okay, I'm already on my way. But you can tell she was still at the house. Or there was times where I would call her and she'd be like, oh no, I'm not gonna go and pick you up. Okay, so how do you expect us to get home? I mean, from where our high school was and from our high school and the house, we lived by another high school, so we were transfers at the school that we were at. So it was, if I can't remember exactly the the distance, but I'll look it up and then I'll put it up on the screen somewhere, um how far away it is. And I know that there's a lot of people that they take the bus, or like, of course they have to, you know what I mean? Like, there's kids that take the bus, or the kids that they have to walk, and I understand that. um but obviously I was never used to that. I was never, and that's just like first world problems to begin with, you know what I mean? I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh, boo-hoo for me, like, oh, I had to walk like a little bit, when there's people that they have to ride the bus, or they have to, like, public transportation or whatever the case may be. So I'd be like, okay, well then how do we get home? Like, and I think I had her mom's number saved. Like, I had it written it down because I didn't want to lose it, just in case we had to call her for something or whatever. She was the closest one to the high school. And I'd be like, oh, okay, well, and she'd be like, oh, okay, we'll just walk to my mom's. I'm like, oh, well, is it okay if I call her, like, to come and pick us up? No, just walk. Like, okay. Like, like, never in a million years would they ever let my younger siblings walk. That's a no-no. Like, oh, that's forbidden. You cannot do that. That's, how could you even say that? You know what I mean? Like, and for us it was kind of just like, oh, I don't want to pick you up. Go walk. but you can't ask anybody for a ride. You know what I mean? And so me and my sister, we would have to walk sometimes. It wasn't all the time, but there was a good amount of times that we would have to walk. And I don't know the distance from the high school to her. I think I wrote it down because I think my sister ended up, so it's like 1.2 miles away, and that's exact because my sister, I told her that I was going to talk about it, and she was like, "Oh, let me give you the exact distance." So for walking, it's like roughly 30 minutes or so, depending on how fast you walk and shit, right? But I remember we would have to walk to her mom's house, and it was hot as fuck, like super fucking hot, because of course we live in like desert, it's not fucking snowing, it's not fucking raining, like it's fucking hot. And we would walk, and obviously we were just like talking to one another, checking our surroundings. Of course we have to kind of we have to watch out for ourselves. And we would get there, and her mom would just be like completely like, "Oh, like I didn't even know you guys were coming." Like she wouldn't even give her mom the heads up of, "Hey, the girls are walking to your house, like just kind of be ready because they're going to get there." I remember the mom was like, "Ay, pues, well, why didn't you?" Obviously in Spanish, right? Like, "Oh, well, why didn't you call? Like, I would have gone and pick you up." And I would tell her, I'd be like, "Oh, well, Sharon told me not to. Sharon told us not to call you to not pick us up." And the mom, so she has like mom and dad, right? And same thing, the dad would ask, but the dad, he speaks both English and Spanish. And he would be like, "Oh, hey girls, like what happened or whatever," and I'd be like, "Oh, well, Sharon told us to come, like told us to walk over here." And he would be livid, like he would be very upset, and like, well, why didn't you call us, like we would have gone to pick you up." And I was like, "Oh, well, she told us not to call you, so you know." And she was because according to Sharon, it was like, "Oh, well, I don't know if she's home, like she might be like out grocery shopping." Like, how do you expect to, why would you want us to walk to a house that no probably nobody's there, you know what I mean? And we would get there, and both of her parents would be very upset that she made us walk. And I think when she either Sharon would come and pick us up, or she would tell her mom to go and drop us off at the house, like her parents would tell her, "Well, why did you let them walk? Like why didn't you let us go and pick them up?" and things like that. I don't know those conversations and what happened between them, but I do know that they would get upset about it, and they would bring it up to her when they saw her or whatever, or when they spoke to her. And so yeah, I remember walking, and it was fucking hot, and us like walking, like, "Oh, well, what is she probably doing?" Like we would just like make up scenarios in our head, like, "Oh yeah, she's probably just obviously teenage brains just talking shit," and like, "Oh, she's probably just laying down and fucking doing nothing," or, "Oh, she," like, but we were angry, we were upset that she could care less to just, okay, just walk, I guess, but don't call my mom because I don't want her to be like going to pick you guys up. And so yeah, I don't know if my dad knows about that, or if really anybody else knows about that. I know like my dad's side of the family that we're close to, I do know that they know about that. um but yeah. And so when I so this usually only happened to me, but I would have to ask my sister if that also happened to her as well. But I remember from January to like April, so like pretty much the second semester of school, I had softball, and I wouldn't get out of practice till like six or seven or so. I don't remember exactly the times, but I know it was past six. And depending on because at that time they didn't have lights at the field yet, so whenever before like the spring forward, the sun would set like very like at six or so. so we wouldn't be able to go past that time because we didn't have light. And so I want to say like freshman, because I was in softball my 4 years of high school, and I think my first 2 years, none of my friends had cars, and I think it wasn't until junior year. Yeah, I want to say junior year and senior year, I think, is when my friends started get having like or getting cars or whatever. And so I mean, that even was a struggle too. I mean, they would pick up my sister from school, and then they would have to come back and pick me up from practice. And once again, I mean, there was times where everybody had already left and I was just there waiting. I think for sure, I think my coach stayed a little bit, but I don't remember if she stayed until everybody got picked up. I don't remember that because I know she had kids of her own. But sometimes my friends would wait with me, and then we would just like wait there, like by like the locker the locker rooms of the softball locker room, and then they would get there for me. And then, or sometimes, so it wasn't until I want to say, I think my senior year is when my friends had cars, and my dad would be like, "Oh well, I'm not home, so I don't know how you're gonna get home," kind of thing. Like he didn't say that, but it was kind of like hinting towards, "Well, I don't know how you're gonna get home." And I would, thankfully, I had a friend back then. We were super super close, and she lived in the same exact area as my house. So I think she was, so like, like a main street, and then it has like lights, and then it has, and like after that it's like little streets, and then the next main lights. So that's how kind of far away apart, like how far away we were from each other. I think we were probably like a good like maybe minute away from each other, like the houses. And so when she got a car, I would ask her, "Hey, like, I don't mean to bother you, but do you think you can take me home because there's nobody to pick me up?" She's like, "Oh yeah, of course." Like it was it wasn't too much out of her way, but it was kind of like we had to pass her house, her drop me off, and then she would come back home. Um, but it was like maybe like a 1 to 2 minute drive from her house to my house. And so most of the time, I would just tell my dad, "Oh, well," she would offer, like, "Well, you don't have to have them come pick you up. Like, I can just take you." So most of the time, it was her taking me home. And then my friend Allison, who I'm still friends with, she would also sometimes take me, but it was for sure out of her way, like way more out of her way than it was from the other friend. And then there was another friend as well, and sometimes she would take me, but it was very rare because the other friend that would live close by me, she would offer. So I mean, yeah, it's just crazy because as a kid growing up, it always felt like if I was an inconvenience. It felt like if, oh, maybe it would be better if I just didn't live here anymore. What if I just go live with my grandma? But at that same point, I was kind of like, well, I kind of want to stay here only because I have all my friends where I'm going to school, and I I have my sports. It's a little bit easier. And I was also thinking in the sense of, I know my grandma would take me in. That's just like, I know for a fact she would have taken me in. It was just more of, I didn't want to be inconsiderate and be like, "Oh, well, if I'm going to stay with over there with her, okay, well, can you take me to school and pick me up, and I have practice, so you're not going to be able to pick me up until later on in the day, and then, oh, well, I have games, so on Saturdays, like just all those kind of all those different things." And I know she wouldn't have minded, but it was kind of like I didn't want to put that on her. And especially since I had already felt like that with my own dad, I kind of felt like, oh, well, I couldn't really I felt like I couldn't do a lot because it was kind of already, oh, I'm already existing and I'm an inconvenience to somebody. And it's sad to think about it, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make me sad now to this day. I mean, yeah, I'm kind of like, oh, like that was fucked up, or oh, like that's like that was shitty of them to do, or her to do, or him to do, or whatever. But it's more of, you're a kid and you're already thinking like that. You know what I mean? Like, I was already in elementary school and I was already thinking like that. Middle school and especially high school. Um, I feel like I was jealous of the connections and the relationships that my friends had with their parents and things like that. And I discussed, like, I touched a little bit about that on my previous videos, um, because of how maybe I didn't know fully everything that happened, like with my friends and their families and things like that, but a good portion of it I knew about it, you know what I mean? And it just sucked for it. And like seeing my friends and their families coming to our games, and their families coming to events for school and things like that. And of course I know my dad worked and things like that, but on the days that he could have, he didn't. And not all the time, I'm not saying all the time, but a good portion of it, I remember them not being there. And because at that time my grandma was still working, so she couldn't, I mean, obviously if she could have, she would. And on my games, when I had games on Saturdays, she would go and she would take my sister with her whenever she had the chance to, and just like that. So I feel like a lot of the family dynamic, it came from my grandma, because of how close she was to us and how she interacted more with us than my parents did. And when I say my parents, I mean like my biological mom and my dad. But what else was I gonna talk about? So, so this is kind of where I'm gonna start talking about. So this kind of goes back into when I was talking about how Sharon would say that we were being rude to her, or we made her feel uncomfortable and things like that. So I was already, it was either I was a junior or I was a senior. I don't remember exactly the the year that this happened, but so I had been wanting a phone. I had told my dad, "Oh, well, when can I get a phone?" Like, I I feel like I need it, and not because I want like a super extravagant phone. I didn't want like an iPhone. I didn't want like a super crazy phone. I just wanted it for safety, and also for me wanting to have a phone. And my dad would be like, "Oh, well, what happened to your first phone? Like, how do I know that you're responsible enough to have a phone again?" And I'm like, "Well, bro, like, I'm like 16, 17 years old and I don't have a fucking phone. Like, how am I not more responsible?" You know, I've always been a responsible kid except for that time, right? But I've always been responsible. I've always, like I said, I kept my room clean. I had very good grades. I mean, I was never in trouble at school or anywhere, you know what I mean? So I remember this one time I got into the vehicle, that the family car, whatever. Both me and my sister, we got picked up from school, and he was like, "Oh, well, we're gonna go and eat." So I was like, "Okay, whatever." So as we were driving, I see Sharon, and she has like a brand new iPhone. And it was like the time where the red came out, like those red versions of the iPhones. I don't know exactly what they're called, but like the ones where like the back is red or whatever. And I see her, and she's like showing it off, because at that time, well, me and my sister, we didn't have phones like that. I think my sister had a phone, but it was like a very basic phone. Like, it wasn't like, oh, you can have social media on it or whatever. And I remember Sharon was like there and she was like showing it off. So I told my dad, oh, so dad, when can I get a phone? Because that shit just pissed me the fuck off. Like, pissed me off. So I was like, whatever, I'm just gonna talk about it. So I was like, oh dad, like, when can I get a phone? And he was like, oh, well, do you think you've earned it? Goodbye. That's when shit popped off. And I was like, what do you mean, do I think I've deserved it? I get good grades. I'm a good like student. I'm a good kid. I don't do shit. What do you mean, do you think I've earned it? In my head, when he said that, in my old, like, right away, I just thought, oh, he doesn't think I earned it. You know what I mean? So I was like, earned it? What do you mean? And he's like, well, yeah, you're not just given things. You're supposed to earn them. And I was like, well, do you think she earned it? Goodbye. I was done for. But I didn't give a fuck. I wasn't gonna back down. Like, I was like, well, fuck you. And fuck that. You know what I mean? So, I remember he was like, what do you mean? Like, kind of taken aback by what I had said. And I was like, well, yeah, like, do you think Sharon earned it? Like, she doesn't do anything, you know? And he was just like, oh, like, I to that extent, I don't remember exactly what he had told me. But pretty much he was like, oh, like, to, like, kind of sum it all up, he was kind of just like, oh, well, you shouldn't say that, and you don't know what Sharon has or hasn't earned, or what she has or hasn't done to earn something, or whatever it was. Whole time Sharon's quiet. All four of us are in the car, meaning my siblings and I, and or me and my siblings. Yeah, I said that wrong, but my three younger siblings and myself, Sharon, and my dad. And then I was like, I don't know what was wrong with me that day. I guess I was just holding too much shit inside that I just fucking exploded. And I was like, well, fuck that. Like, Sharon doesn't work. What is Sharon? How did Sharon earn that fucking phone? Because from the looks of it, it looks like if I earned that phone more than her. And my dad was like, oh, like, pretty much saying like, oh, I'm being disrespectful and da 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 da. And I still wasn't backing down. I was like, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. Like, I don't care. And we ended up going to like a wing place. And so I didn't want to go inside. I was already pissed, and I was like, really? Like, all this fucking effort and all my hard work doesn't, you like, it just goes unnoticed. Might as well just be a fucking bum, because apparently that earns you shit. And I didn't want to go inside. And I was like, I'm not gonna go inside. I don't even want to eat. I'm not even hungry. I don't give a fuck. Like, I don't care. And my two younger siblings and Sharon walked in, and then well, I think we all walked in, but I told him I don't want to go inside. Like, I don't want to sit with you. Like, I don't want to sit with you guys. Like, why the fuck would I want to sit with you guys? And I remember we sat down, and then we were talking about it more, because obviously it had just happened. So from like the school to there, it was probably like maybe like a 15-minute drive or so, 10-15 minutes. And obviously it was still like a fresh kind of situation, right? And I remember we were still talking about it at the table. And I'm just like, no, like, that's not okay. Like, that's not fair. Excuse me. It's not fair that she earned that shit, but when I ask you about it, I haven't earned it yet. I don't deserve it yet, you know what I mean? So I ended up walking out of the restaurant, and my sister tells me to this day that she wanted to go with me, but my dad told her, no, like, you're gonna stay here, you sit down. And I walked out. I sat down outside, And if I had a phone, I would have called my grandma to come pick me up. Did I have a fucking phone? No, bitch, I didn't have a fucking phone. So, I was sitting there and I was like, ugh, like I should just start walking. Like I know how to get to my grandma's house, so like whatever, like I can fucking, in my head I was literally thinking like, well, I can just fucking walk and find somebody, because I have a very good memory. And so I remembered a lot of people's phone numbers. I remembered a lot of people's birthdays. Like I pretty much know every single person's birthday in my family. And so of course I knew my grandma's number, and I think I knew my tia's number, and I knew a lot of people's numbers. So I was like, I don't care. I'm just gonna fucking walk, cause right by there was like a Walmart. So like I'll just walk into Walmart and I'll just ask a fucking somebody like, oh, like I I'm not with somebody, like I need to call my grandma, or I don't know, something, you know? In my head I was really thinking I'm just gonna fucking walk away. Simple as that. But no, my dad ended up like coming out, and he was like telling me shit or whatever, and he was like, you're gonna go back inside and you're gonna apologize. And I told him, why do I have to apologize? What am I gonna apologize for? Everything that I said was true. What need is there to apologize? There's no need to apologize. And he's like, that was very disrespectful, blah 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 blah. Come to all in all, I ended up going back inside. I sat down. Sharon, by the way, is just fucking silent this whole time. She hasn't said anything. No words came out of her mouth. And then I'm just there, and like I said in my, I don't know if I said that in my previous video, but if I didn't say it in my previous video, when we got in trouble or things happened or whatever, my dad would threaten us with my grandma, meaning if something happened, oh, well, you're not gonna go to with your grandma this weekend, you know. And my grandma was everything to me. She still is, but she means the absolute world to me. She is everything. And that broke me, you know, like to not see my grandma, like, well, fuck that, you know, like I'd rather just suck it all up and whatever. I'd rather deal with all this shit than not see her. And so I ended up, I was like, oh, sorry. Obviously I didn't mean it. You know what I mean? If I had my fucking hands like this behind my back, I would have. And she was like, thank you. That's what I was waiting for. And I was like, bitch. And I was like, I'm this fucking close to just being like, never the fuck mind. I take my fucking sorry back because of her fucking reaction. And oh, I was so fucking upset when she said that. Thank you. Oh my gosh, I was waiting for that. Like, really, bitch? Oh, I was fucking so fucking upset. And then they acted like if nothing ever happened. Me sitting like this is like this emoji. Acting like if nothing ever fucking happened, and they just went about their day. Hello? Like, ugh. If that doesn't give you trauma, I don't know what the fuck does. Ugh, I'm so upset. I was just even thinking about it now. I'm just like, bitch, like really, like it's fucking crazy. But how much time do I have? I've been going on for a hot fucking minute, but yeah, that's pretty much all I was gonna talk about. And if I remember like a lot of other things when like my videos go on, I guess they'll kind of just hop into like the topics or whatever. But yeah, that's my fight at the wing place. Perfection. But yeah, so I guess we're gonna wrap up today's video right here. The red edition iPhones and the fucking I don't even know what else. I just ranted on and on and on, but yeah, that's probably the end of that little series. Um, and then I kind of had to brainstorm for next video. I really want to start doing like a poll on Instagram of maybe questions people can like ask me and I can answer them, or kind of make a topic and kind of get questions or topics, like different little subjects to talk about. But I feel like people won't engage with that, or they might. I don't know. Of course, I don't have a lot of following on like TikTok or Instagram, which is where I want to do it. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see what the next episode, or what I come up for the next episode. So with that being said, we're gonna end it here. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to the tea and the trauma of my childhood. Make sure you guys like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next Monday.